Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Whitney Ziegler. I'm the founder and CEO of Big Rocks Organizing. We are a professional organizing and move management company located out of the Portland metro area. We are an all-women team. We were founded in 2015, and our core values are respect, compassion, and professionalism. And we're very passionate about helping our clients make space for what truly matters. I'm so excited to have Alissa Fuchs, our operations manager. She's going to be talking today about the power of habits in maintaining organization. Alissa has been organizing since 2018. We've been lucky enough to have her as our operations manager since 2020. And she has a background in sociology and ABA therapy, and she's just a dynamite organizer. We're so lucky to have her here with us today. Alissa, take it away.
Thank you, Whitney, and welcome everyone. Thank you for coming this lovely evening. Welcome to my presentation on habits and maintaining organization. So today we'll be discussing how you can set up your organization in a way that works for you so that you're able to maintain it and keep on top of things and stay tidy. First of all, I want to emphasize that this is something we all struggle with. So, don't feel badly about yourself if you have trouble keeping things under control, because, there's a lot going on in the world, and we also have our commitments maybe to work or family or other things. So there's a lot to keep up with. So just go easy on yourself, be gentle with yourself when you think about this topic. What I want to offer you tonight are tools to empower you, to help and empower you to gain control over your environment. So not everything I suggest is going to work for every person. We all have different life situations, different brain wiring, but I'm hoping that everyone can find a few takeaways that might, spark something for them, or at least get you thinking about it in a different way, right? In addition, I want to emphasize that you don't have to, organize and overhaul your entire house before you get started implementing some of these habits or thinking about some of these habits. A lot of times we want to wait till we get to that perfect point to start, and that might be a ways down the road. You want to start developing the habits, and that's going to help you get there, and it's going to help you sustain. So start small, start with maybe one room, or even if you want to start with, say, a desk, and you can make that your practice space. You can practice, organizing that and then keeping it that way. Okay. So let me get started with our presentation here. I'm going to bring it up and share my screen. Okay. And let me start our slideshow. Okay. So, all right, let me start here actually. Okay, so in order to maintain organization, you first need to organize your space. That's obvious, right? And what that means, well, let's talk about what it means to be organized. Let's use a simple definition here. What organized means to me is that, one, everything has a purpose, and two, everything has a home. So when you think about everything having a purpose, I don't mean it needs to be strictly utilitarian. Its purpose can be decorative. It can, maybe you think of Marie Kondo and it brings you joy, or, it's something that reminds you of someone. But, what you want to avoid is having things cluttering up your space that you're not currently using, and that, maybe have a more hypothetical purpose. Secondly, everything needs to have a home. So it needs to have a place where it gets put away. You can't expect to clear off your desk without first setting up a filing system or some sort of system for that paperwork to go into. Otherwise, you get into the habit of just kind of piling things in a drawer, and basically you're just moving the disorganization to a different place. We've all been there. So when I say everything should have a home, you want a very specific place. It's not just wherever there's room for it. You want to designate a specific space for those things. Okay. So sometimes a person can be organized in the sense that everything has a purpose and everything has a home, but they still struggle to maintain that organization. And this may be because it's not organized in a way that makes sense to them personally. When they go to look for things, they have a hard time finding them. Basically, we are fed a lot of images and ideas from TV and magazines and other places about the way your home should be organized, but there's no one size fits all. I think about those remodeling or organizing shows where someone comes in and just, the family leaves and they overhaul the entire house. What happens after the TV crews are gone? How does this family then live in this house that was organized or remodeled by strangers? So you really want to set up a system that is personal to you, because when you can find things and things make sense to you, you're going to be able to maintain that much better. Okay, so let's get into how do I start to set up this organization system that works for me. Well, the first step, as always, is right sizing. So, with right sizing, you want to get rid of anything that's extraneous. You want to remove anything that no longer serves a purpose for you at this particular point in your life. So you may have, some items from a hobby that you were really into 10 years ago, but maybe you've stopped doing that, and it's time for you to pass that on to someone else, or you're into new things. So you really want to pare down to things that are functional for you right now. And remember, I'm saying functional, that includes just things that bring you joy right now, not just utilitarian. And secondly, you want to just keep things that are functional in that particular space. So if you're storing craft supplies in your office, but you tend to work on those projects somewhere else, see if you can move those to the space where they're relevant. Think about the function of that room, and you want things that support the function of that room there, and anything else should be moved accordingly. You also want to think about, we tend to use 20% of our stuff 80% of the time. If you really notice your habits, we have things that we love and we return to again and again, and then we have, sort of other things that we're like, oh, maybe I'll wear that someday, but don't tend to get around to it. The more we have of something, the more time you're spending cleaning those things, maintaining those things. You're using your space to store those things. A lot of times we don't think of the cost of having more things. We think of, we get that excitement of getting the thing and having the thing, but there is another side to that. And so take that into consideration when you're looking at your things. I had a client, and he was a single man living alone, and he had tons of plates. He had, maybe 50, 60 plates. And because of that, he would use a plate and then, pile it on the counter and everywhere else. And it got to the point where he was just overwhelmed, where there were so many plates everywhere that he just shut down and didn't know where to begin in terms of washing and putting things away. So I suggested to him that, hey, maybe try having a few less plates. And so he boxed some up, put them away in storage where it wasn't easy to get to them, but he could, get them if he needed them. But once he pared down to like having 10 plates, he was, forced to wash them on a more regular basis. It never got to that point where it was so overwhelming for him. So think about that. What do you really need on a daily basis? And, what is that number? Okay. All right. Now this goes to this includes furniture too. So don't think your furniture is escaping here. it's important when you look at a room to, think critically about it. Remember, we talked about how does this support the function of the space? Because I think what happens a lot of times is if something either isn't used very frequently, or if it doesn't have a specific designated function, it becomes a landing zone for things. It's, you got that chair in the bedroom that you throw clothes on, or something in the living room that's collecting paperwork. So you want to think about, okay, do I really need this in the space? Maybe this is just, becoming a clothes horse. Maybe I can get rid of it. If it's something, maybe there's something about that piece of furniture. Maybe it's uncomfortable. Can you, add a pillow to it? Maybe you can move it to a different area where it's going to be more usable, like where people can have a conversation sitting in that chair. Just think of, or maybe it can go in another room. Just think about what the function is and where that piece fits in best. With tables and surfaces, those blank spaces tend to attract clutter. It should be another law of physics that that happens. So think about designating those flat surfaces for something specific. So that can be, displaying something that you love, or, some framed photos, something like that. So be critical about the things that are in your space. Okay, so our next tip for organizing in a way that works for you, and I think this one is very important, is to categorize correctly. And I have that in quotes because I'm not saying that there is like one right way to categorize things. Again, this is categorizing in a way that makes sense for you and how you use that item. So take, for example, some wooden spoons that you have, and you have them in your kitchen drawer, but you don't really ever use them. Say they belong to your grandmother and they remind you of her and you really want to keep them and you treasure them, but they don't need to be in your functional space in the kitchen where you're not using them. Categorize them instead as memorabilia, and you can, maybe put them up on the wall in the kitchen, or you can store them in a box with other things belonging to your grandmother, so you can go and look through that occasionally. But you don't want those things cluttering up your usable space. I see this a lot with t-shirts. You get you get t-shirts when you see a band or from a summer camp or work or wherever else. They're sort of these memorabilia t-shirts, and if you wear them, yes, keep them in your closet or your dresser. If it's just something to remember that time in your life, maybe you can store them in an underbed storage container or somewhere else. You also want to use your own criteria, not someone else's, about where things should go. So if you are keeping your pills and vitamins in the medicine cabinet in the bathroom because that's where you put those things, right? Well, maybe you tend to take those things in the morning in the kitchen with your breakfast. So maybe they belong there instead. Remember, you want that room to function for what you do in that room. Okay, so once you've categorized things, you've grouped them together, that's the point when you find a container for them. And you want to choose the right container. So when choosing a container for a category of items, like say if you can't fit all your clothes in your drawers, some might end up on the floor. That's just physics. You want to be able to put all that stuff away. So you want to think about the maximum number of that item you have. Like if I were to do all my laundry, what space do I need to put all of this away? Or if you're finding bins for your pantry, go on a big shopping trip first, get all the things that you would normally get, and then you choose bins to put those things in. Because you want it to be big enough to contain what it's going to contain, but you don't want it to be so large. And this is another issue that happens where it encourages you to accumulate excess, or a lot of times other things get put in there just because there's space, and then the categories become mixed and it just becomes another miscellaneous box. and then you have a hard time finding anything. Okay, so you want to find the perfect, Goldilocks box of not too big and not too small. You can also use those containers once you have them as a natural limit. So basically that is going to constrain you to the size of that container. And if you get anything more, you'll have to take something out. So say you bring home 3 new pairs of socks and your sock drawer is already full, take out 3 old pairs. That's going to get you thinking about right sizing every time and controlling what's coming in and what's going out. Oops, sorry. All right, so the next tip is to work with and not against your habits and circumstances. So I know when we think about getting organized, we have this image of perfection. And, as with anything, if we set our expectations too high, we might set ourselves up to fail and experience overwhelm. And when you get to that point, oftentimes you abandon that system altogether. So think about what level of organization is currently manageable for you. Think about, this might mean a little bit of compromising. So for example, say you have a habit of throwing clothes on the floor because you want to wear them a couple times before you wash them. They don't really belong in the hamper yet, but you're having a hard time getting them hung back up again. So meet yourself halfway. Maybe you have a separate hamper where you put those just worn once clothes, and then after you wear them again, you can put them in your laundry hamper. Think about maybe baby steps on the way towards that goal of being perfectly organized. Learn how to manage something a little bit easier, a little closer to what you're already doing now. And then you can generalize that and work towards something more perfect. Another example, say your family tends to come home and just dump all their stuff in front of the door. And you have a coat closet, but it's down the hall and they never put stuff there. Because think about all the barriers towards doing that and all the friction that they encounter to do that. They're coming in, they're carrying a lot of heavy stuff. They have to go down the hallway, open the door, take out the hanger. It's too much to expect right off the bat. Maybe you meet them halfway, set up a little system right by the front door with some hooks and a place to put shoes. Again, just start small and then you can work your way up from there, because you want to develop these habits first before you can develop harder habits. You want to have a practice habit, we'll call it. You also want to think strategically about your storage spaces. So again, this comes back to, what do you normally do, and think about if you have a storage bench right by your front door and your family's meant to put their shoes in there. But what usually happens is things get put on top of that bench and then it doesn't get used because you'd have to move everything off, lift it up. Again, it's those barriers, it's that friction. So maybe instead you get one of those open shoe storage organizers. It's not, they're not hidden away. It's not your perfect ideal, but it's better than them being on the floor. You want to aim for progress and not necessarily perfection when you first get started. Make your habits easier to adopt, and then you can sort of raise the stakes on yourself, if that makes sense. Okay, so this is something I kind of alluded to earlier, but I want to really emphasize it, and that is the fact that overwhelm often leads to inaction. So when we allow things to spiral out of control, it just gets to the point where it's really hard for us to get started at all. It's hard to motivate, it's hard to find the time to, clean the whole house when things have just gotten chaotic. So you want to think about You want to prevent yourself from getting to that point. And the way you do that is to use small, consistent steps. And those are the habits we're going to be talking about. Small things you can do, small habits you can get into, so that you're not getting to this point where it's overwhelming. So with that, we're going to transition to talking about habits. We've talked about the way you set up your space, your organizing system, so that you can be successful. But let's talk about how you keep that going once it's set up, how you put things away and keep things tidy and keep things clean. We can't force ourselves to stay organized through sheer force of will. I know sometimes we think we can, but it's going to be inconsistent if we try to do that. But we can develop habits that will help us tidy consistently rather than waiting till you get to that point of overwhelm. So you want to build habits that are going to become as automatic as brushing your teeth. Okay. I'm not going to tell you how to build those habits in this talk. That's sort of another topic. But I'm going to give you some habits that organized people use and some ways you can start thinking about it in your life. So we'll call them rules to live by. Okay. So the first rule I'm going to put out there for you is the 2-minute rule. So this rule says that if you can accomplish a task in 2 minutes, do it immediately. And this is a hard habit to get into. You have to really be thinking about it. But this is going to sort of head off those situations where you bring in the mail and you put it in a pile, and that sort of gives you the go-ahead to continue to do that. So next time you bring in the mail, you're putting it in that pile. With the 2-minute rule, say you have something, okay, I can immediately recycle these things. That took 10 seconds, The renowned organizer Barbara Hemphill described disorganization as a series of deferred decisions. So when we're putting off making these small decisions, we are, heading towards that overwhelm, heading towards a much bigger issue that we have to deal with and take more time and more energy to deal with. So 2-minute rule, just, get started practicing that. And the more you do it, the more it's going to become automatic in different areas of your life. Okay, the next rule is Ohio, only handle it once. So this rule, it has to do more with paperwork than anything else. And I'm not necessarily saying you just have to handle it once. I would say every time you touch that item, take some forward action on it. Okay, because some things might need a little more processing. But what you want to avoid is just moving piles here and there around the room and not dealing with them. That's when things get out of control. So when you take the mail in, you are recycling things, you are filing it. If it's an event, you want to write that down in your calendar. If it's something that needs more research and you need to deal with that later, have a place where you put those things and schedule the time to do that. So each time you are handling this piece of paper, you're making progress on it. You're not just shifting it around for a later date to deal with. So I think a lot of times something we get into is this idea that unless we can finish the entire task, we're not going to start it at all. So thinking about maybe you need to clean up the kitchen and there are dishes everywhere, and you think, okay, I don't have an hour to do this, so I'm just going to put that off till later. Doing part of a task is better than none at all. we all know this, but it's hard to think about that. We get stuck in this belief that we need this chunk of time to complete the whole chore. But it's okay to approach chores in a more piecemeal fashion. You can make a rule that every time you go into the kitchen for a snack or to refill your coffee, that you're gonna put 2 dishes away or wash 2 dishes. Simple as that. You can make a rule for yourself that every time you check your email, you're going to unsubscribe from 2 newsletters that aren't relevant to you anymore. Think about tiny steps you can do when you just have a little bit of time. So you don't need that whole hour to clean the kitchen. You can do a few things within the 5 minutes that you have. Those small steps are going to lead to larger results. And by shifting into the mindset of small, consistent action, that's how you build up the habits of maintaining your organization and maintaining your tidying. It's going to help you get through the backlog, and it's going to help you stay on top of things. Okay, so think like a wait person. How many people have worked in a restaurant before? Anyone? So, but you've all, I'm sure, been to a restaurant, and when you think about a wait person, they're usually not just doing one thing. They sort of have a global view of what's going on in the restaurant. So they may be bringing food to a table, and on the way they're scanning the restaurant and seeing how the other patrons are doing, and they're dropping off ketchup at a table, and on the way back they're asking someone how their meal is. So they're always sort of multitasking as they go. They don't ever waste a trip to and from the kitchen. So you can start to think about this in your own house. Say you're headed upstairs to do something. Why not grab those couple of sweaters that are laying on the couch and take them up to your hamper? Just think of small things you can do to piggyback on what you're already doing. You don't have to go out of your way, but just start to tweak the way you think about it. Okay. So this is, this might be a little controversial for some, but I like to say have several to-do lists. And the reason behind this is that we tend to sort of make this overall list, and it often includes like some things that are very small, easy tasks, and then it can include much bigger, more complex tasks, and they have different priorities, different deadlines. So this might be kind of a silly example, but you don't want to have pick up milk at the store and plan a wedding on the same to-do list. Basically, you want to have your regular to-do list of discrete tasks with a deadline, and that's you have your daily one, you have your weekly one. Those are things you need to get done by the end of the week. They have specific deadlines. You're going to do it in that time period. But it's good to also have what I call opportunistic lists, and these are lists that you're going to reference when you have the time or the energy to do those things. So that can include a long-term list of things that, they don't really have a deadline, and they may be a little complicated, but you still want to get them done eventually. So you have a list of, say, okay, sometime I want to clean out the entire oven. I don't have to get it done by the end of the week, but sometime I want to do that. Then you have a list for smaller tasks, and that's things like, okay, I should call my friend Barb, or I should, dust off all the plants or the blinds or something like that. So keep these in a place where you're going to reference them, where you're going to be able to find them. So not sticky notes that are going to get lost. You want, maybe if you're a digital person, you can keep them in a notes list on your phone. If you're more of an analog person, you can have a page in your planner dedicated to these. But then when you come across that time, like say you have 5 minutes in between something, check out that list of small things. Okay, what can I do in this time? Or say you suddenly have a long chunk of unexpected time. Okay, what bigger task can I get done during this time? That's part of, oftentimes those things sort of get pushed by the wayside. They're on our to-do lists, and, we keep putting them on week after week, or they get lost on a sticky note. You want a place where you can find them and really take advantage of that time. Okay, now this is very important. You should not expect yourself to keep up with things if you don't give yourself the time. Because if you're relying on your energy or motivation, that's going to end up being inconsistent. You're just sort of relying on chance. Some days you're going to, be able to clean for an hour. Other days you're just going to say, I'm too tired, forget about it. You really want to schedule some time to reset things. You want to make it consistent. So that can either be a set time of day, like, say 7 o'clock, or you can attach it to something else you're already doing and say, do it after dinner. And you want to anyone can, set aside 10 to 15 minutes of their day to sort of reset and tidy things up. I would suggest using a timer, or you can use a playlist, make a 15-minute list of songs that gets you pumped up and gets you ready to go. And if you can involve your family too, make them part of it and help them to learn those skills. If you have really young kids, have them help you do what you're doing so they learn how to do that. If you have, slightly older kids, they might try to use the excuse, oh, I don't know what to do. Like, what's next? It looks fine. Have a list of things that they can reference and just put that on the fridge or wherever makes sense. But you really want to have this consistent time day after day to sort of get things back. I mean, they don't need to get entirely back to organization, like perfect organization, but you want to at least keep up with the backflow. Okay. Have a plan for the inflow of stuff. So we all have things that are coming into our lives on a regular basis. So say you've organized everything you have, it has a home, it has a function. It doesn't end there, right? We always have things coming in. And this could be mail, kids' art, paperwork, clothing, if you're going shopping on a regular basis, all of those things. So you need to make a plan for those things that are coming in. You have to set up enough time and space to deal with those. So think about, okay, what is coming in? What are the things in my life that come into my home on a regular basis? And how often is that? Is it daily? Is it weekly? Every month? Like establish what the inflow is. From there, think about, okay, well, where do I put these things? Do I have a space for it in my home? Do I have other things like it that I can put it with? Or when will you take action on it? Do you have time set up in your day, or have you put time in your calendar when you're going to take action on that thing? Okay. So an example of this would be if you have kids' artwork coming in, and it's never just one thing. It's always piles of papers and crayon drawings and crafts and all the things. So what do you do with that? You can decide, okay, we're going to put it all up on the wall. and display it so we can see what they've been working on. And then at the end of the week, we'll take it all down and then we'll start putting up next week's artwork. Maybe that could be a plan. Another plan could be compiling it all in a bin. And once a month, you go through that bin and you decide, okay, what are the best pieces out of here? Maybe we'll choose 2 of them. And you put those away, file those away and keep them, and then the rest gets recycled. Think about each thing coming in and create that plan. All right. Oop. Okay. So maintaining organization, think of it as a 2-step process. You know, first you want to get things to the point where you know where they go, you can find them, you can put them away. Everything is functional, it makes sense for you. And then from there, you want to start building those habits in your daily life of, okay, I deal with this stuff right away. I have a plan for this. I am ready for the inflow of this item. You want to set up those habits and remember, take small, consistent steps. And that's going to help you through the backlog and everything coming in. And it's going to help you maintain that. So remember to start small, either with a piece of furniture, it can be a desk or a room. And then you can generalize from there and start to take it into the rest of your house. Okay, so give it a go. Give it a try, and I look forward to hearing how it goes for everyone. So I want to hear from people who've decided to come to this presentation, and maybe we can talk about a challenge you have, or if something we talked about tonight resonated with you, or if you have any questions for me. I'm going to open up the floor here. And Whitney, will you check the chat? It looks like there's some comments in there, or
It was mostly just me sharing your handout as
okay.
Okay,
I wasn't sure people were asking questions, and
we do have a message. You nailed several organizational challenges, laundry and mail, exclamation point.
Okay. Laundry's a big one. I think everyone has trouble with that. Even I, have been known to not put everything away right away. So I feel you on that one.
Any other comments or questions?
Yes. Okay. I see Bonnie raising her hand. Yes. You might need to unmute.
Well, I actually have a couple of questions. One is, I wondered if you could speak a little bit more about scheduling a reset time. I wasn't sure I was understanding what you were saying. And then my second question is, my biggest failure is filing. I had another organizing company help me set up a great filing system, but I am really lousy about doing it.
Okay.
So that's something I have to start small with, and then my test just ends up cluttered all the time.
Yeah. Okay. So the reset time, it's basically giving yourself a daily allotment of time where you can go and sort of just tidy up a little bit. So bringing clothes to the hamper, putting some dishes away. You don't have to do the whole project or get everything done, but it's basically building that time into your schedule. And as you practice that and get into the habit of doing that, some days you're going to want to do it longer, but other days, maybe you don't have as much energy. But if you hold yourself to doing it anyways, and at least getting through those 15 minutes, that's why you have the timer, because you want to know, okay, I've got a few more minutes. You don't want to quit before the end of that. You want to at least hit that goal. but you sort of have the option to quit after that if you want, or you're too tired or whatever. So it's really building that up as an automatic thing until you get to the point where you're just doing it. And maybe you're even getting the whole chore done, but you want to always start small. In terms of the filing, so you said you already have a system, and do you feel that it makes sense to you, and you can easily find things, you can know where to put them away? Okay, so that's not the issue. The issue is actually doing it, right?
Yeah, right.
So what context is this like with your mail, like you bring in your mail and it needs filing, or is it what kind of paper?
No, it's it's paperwork from like things I get through email. I get paperwork related to some organizations and groups I'm part of.
Okay.
And I have notebooks for things that that are active right now. But I also have I have a backlog of things that need to be filed in my filing system, and it's just some of it's medical things, some of it's financial things, some of it is like my related to personal things, like for myself or members of my family, or things like that. So and then I have a box. I have a drawer on my desk. It's supposed to be the active drawer. And I've just kind of completely lost how to use that. This is not very efficient right now. And then I also have this may be redundant, I have a plastic box too that just sits on the floor, and for organizing things that need to be filed elsewhere.
Okay. The active drawer, is that things that you need to take action on?
Yeah, they say, like, one of them says action, one of them says HUD. I have a notebook that contains things that are current, and or I can keep like coupons. I have contact lists in there, business cards filed by category,
Okay.
Other things like that. And
so for things that you need to take action on or that are more active, sometimes it helps some people are more visual, and if something's in a drawer, it's out of sight, out of mind, especially if it's things you need to take action on. So you might need something that goes on top of your desk, either one of those like things where you file it vertically. That tends to work better than the paper trays where things just get piled on top of each other. And have set aside some time to review that on a regular basis. So, this goes back to the schedule some reset time.
Can you see this?
Okay, yeah, there we go. But
it sits on my floor, but I have to, because I have such limited space. I keep it at the side of my desk, so it's kind of out of sight. And and I guess I just have to have a set time.
Yes.
A reset time every day.
Yes.
To deal with this and just start making it a habit.
Yes, so that's when you can start going through those action items and processing those. And you can also start to get through that backlog of filing. And then just remember your 2-minute rule. When you have something that comes in the door, okay, can I deal with this right now? If so, I should do it. 2-minute rule, only handle it once. Start practicing getting into those habits.
Thank you for your
I've heard that rule before, and I just handle things only once. I learned it while I was still working, and I found that I just had a really hard time only handling something once. I'd be in the middle of something. Well, it's not privilege now because now I'm retired, but I kind of still do the same thing.
Or just think about it as each time you handle it, at least take some action on it. You don't have to do the whole task, but just be moving it forward.
Okay.
Thank you. And we have some additional questions, so I'm going to move us forward here. But on that same topic, Corey had a suggestion that Accordion files work great for staging and sorting documents prior to filing them. That's something that works well for Corey. So thank you for sharing that. We have two questions, which I'm going to combine into one. Mail. People find it overwhelming. And do you have any tips on how to deal with the barrage of mail received that we need to keep track of? And just before you start answering, I want to let people know that our next month in August, our blog topic is going to be all about how to handle mail. So that'll be coming soon.
Okay. Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by keep track of, because everyone sort of has different categories of things coming in. So take a look at, I would suggest, sitting down with your pile of mail and sorting it out into the categories that make sense for you. So what do those look like? Are there things that, are you getting statements on a regular basis that can you do those things online? Can you get rid of that paper mail? Start stacking those in a pile. And then you can work on making that digital if that's something that works for you. Is it, which pieces of mail are for reference? And when do you need to reference them? Which pieces of mail are bills? Can you do those in the moment, or do you need to set up a specific time where you do all your bills? Which pieces of mail are calendar events? Can you put those on your calendar, get rid of the paper copy? So sort it into categories that make sense for you, and then you can come up with a plan for that. So each time you take in your mail, and hopefully this is like the 2-minute rule where you can just sort it into those categories. Okay, where is this going? This goes into a file pile, this goes into recycling, this goes into bill paying pile. I'll do those at the end of the week. Okay. And then what don't you need that's coming into the mail? Can you, request that they stop sending you certain things and catalogs? Can you unsubscribe from things? And again, can you put some things online so you're not just inundated with all this paper?
We have a raised hand from Corey, and then we have 2 other questions in the chat that I'll read afterward.
Okay, Corey, go ahead. You're on mute currently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where I live in an apartment, and right next to the mailbox, there's a little slot where you can take all your junk mail and put it in there.
Nice.
So I do that before I even get into my apartment. That way I take less to my car and I bring less in my apartment. Another thing I was going to suggest, having everything be online and have scheduled payment and
Yep.
all of that, because I've got ADHD and there are times where I forget if I don't think about it. I've had my insurance lapse, and that was a big mistake. So I've learned what not to do. But I was going to suggest, in order to, like, if you want to hold on to your stuff, but you don't want the paper copies. I had some hospital bills that I needed to hold on to, and unemployment statements and all this stuff. And so when I would get them, I would scan them into my computer, and then I didn't need the document anymore. So I didn't have to worry about filing a hard copy. And these are just a lot of similar things like I do at work, where since the pandemic, most everything is paperless, which is really nice because I don't have to haul files around and get everything adjusted.
Yeah.
But those are just a couple of things that I do, and it makes a difference, especially with all those, the newspaper, the ads and everything. When you get those, I don't have to worry about it. And you can have a garbage can right by your front door, you know, a little one. And so if you don't have the convenience of having a hold stuffed junk mail in, you can just drop it, you know, have it, because you're still technically you're still holding it the
Yeah.
first time. And so then you just drop it in your recycle bin, or if you have a shredder, drop it right into your shredder. And those are just things, time savers that I found, and I just thought I would share them.
Thank you so much, Corey. And you bring up a great point about automation. Like anytime you can make something automatic and take yourself out of that process, that's going to be really helpful. And also, you know, any like removing any friction or barriers like we talked about earlier. And that's, you know, okay, it may be hard to take stuff all the way to your recycling bin in the kitchen. Why not have the trash can or the recycling bin right there, or something closer? And also, you know, you want to think about with things you need to do, what is going to prompt you to take action on that thing? Do you need it to be in a place that's visible where you're going to see it often? Do you need to schedule or put a reminder in your phone? Do you need to schedule time in your calendar? You know, what is going to prompt you to do something? Because it's hard to keep track of it all. So, thank you so much for those great tips.
We have 2 more questions in the chat. This one comes from Celeste. Kid art/crafts are a huge issue for me. My 4-year-old is a prolific artist and feels deep emotional attachment to everything she makes. Any recommendations for memorializing the art without keeping the clutter? I've contained it to one bin, but it keeps growing exponentially.
Yeah, yeah. I think sometimes, yes, kids sometimes can get very attached. Like some kids don't care. They're like, I don't, whatever, throw it away. But you know, some kids, you know, are attached to the things they create and, you know, want to keep all of that. And that's, you know, a wonderful sentiment. And but I think it helps. So when we view something in isolation and we hold that one thing, we tend to have a stronger emotional attachment to it than seeing it in an array of things, you know, when you have that comparison. So one thing you can do is maybe give her just a small set of things. You may have heard of sort of the parenting technique where you give the child the choice, right? You don't say, oh, go like eat your broccoli, you know, you can give them a choice. You can say, okay, you can eat broccoli or you can eat corn as your vegetable, but you have to choose one. So they get that agency of choice. But you know, you get that control of like, they're going to eat a healthy vegetable. Right? So try that with art. Like maybe set out 3 pieces of art and say, oh, these are beautiful, you know, I love these, but which one is your favorite? You know, or which one did you really enjoy making? So give them a choice and they can sort of learn how to compare and discern, and you're not stuck keeping every single piece of paper that comes in. So, you know, having some time to, and that's where the backlog comes in, is, you know, you just keep collecting it and collecting it. But like making that time to, you know, go through those decisions and pick one out is going to be key to keeping up with that inflow. And then, you know, when they do keep something, like maybe that thing goes on the fridge for a little bit. And, or maybe, you know, you have a temporary display and you say, hey, we're going to enjoy these for the week, and then we're going to put them away, you know? So play with that, see if that works.
Okay, our last question is an anonymous one. I use a hybrid of analog and digital. I feel I have too many notebooks for various things, climbing / travel,
Mhm.
a journal, morning journal, goals, random stuff, any guidance?
Okay. I guess, is the issue that it's hard to find what you need when you want, like when you want access to it, or is it just, I guess there's several different ways that that can be potentially problematic. I think digital usually works better because you can use tags to find things, whereas with notebooks, you know, it's if you use the same notebook for for all the things, um, you know, you're like flipping through and you're trying to find the right page. So make sure if you're using a notebook, you have some sort of, you have page numbers and sort of like an inventory system or a table of contents that you're writing in, so you know where to find things. If the issue is just having too many notebooks in general and too many things you're tracking, that's a question of priorities. You know, what if you were to rank those things, you know, you're either thinking of it as like you're filing things away as like references, or if it's like these are all things you're doing currently, what is priority to you and what is your focus? And maybe you can, you know, put some of those other things aside for a little while, or think about doing things seasonally, where you're like, okay, for this 3 months, I'm really going to focus on keeping a daily journal and, you know, this and that. And that's going to be sort of my experiment for this period of time. And then the next 3 months, I'm going to try keeping this other kind of journal or something like that. See if you can spread it out that way, and maybe that will help. But if it's just a matter of like wanting to keep all that information, then that's more of sort of like a filing system or some sort of system, and you need to make sure that you're able to get to that when you need it. And so for notebooks, you know, making sure you have that content and that inventory. You might want to check out, there's a video, I think it's on bulletjournal.com. It's a bullet journal system, and that's a way of easily being able to, you know, keep track of all those different things and lists, but making sure that you're finding them and you're reviewing them on a regular basis, so you're actually using that information. Okay, there's one new message that popped up.
Well, I just put bulletjournal.com in there for folks.
Okay.
We're actually out of time for today, but we thank you so much, everybody, for coming today and bringing your questions. Sorry, one more comment in the chat, and then we'll wrap up. Comment from Bonnie. She gets lots of mail that has the plastic clear window. I tear out the plastic part and put it in the trash. I put the rest of the envelope, the paper part, in recycling. Both containers are where I open the mail, so I can immediately do that sorting. Actually, Bonnie, you don't need to take the plastic window out anymore. You can recycle the whole envelope as it is.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and we have a comprehensive recycling guide that I'm happy to email to you if you didn't get that with, I think we did it 2 newsletters ago. So I'm happy to share that with you.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Again, thank you everybody so much. Please let us know about any future topics you'd like to have us talk about or you'd like to learn more about. Our next presentation will be in October, and then we're also planning into 2023. So, and yes, Carrie, I will share the recycling guide with the email. We'll send an email out with Alyssa's handout and a copy of this recording and the recycling guide.
Actually, Whitney, I did get that recycling guide, and I've got it on my bulletin board in my kitchen.
Oh,
So I
perfect.
can readily refer to it. Thank you. Yes.
You're welcome. And Alissa gets credit for that. She created that document for our team, and then we decided to share it with the wider community. So thank you, Alissa, for that. She's a multi-talented woman, and we're very lucky to have had her with us here today. So have a good evening, everyone. Thank you again so much for joining us.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.